Hello, all. Welcome to my research presentation, The Impact of Enslaved Christians During the Revolutionary Period. The narrative of the Revolutionary period in American history often omits the voices of oppressed populations during that time period. Enslaved Christians played an important role in the fight for freedom and liberty. They helped set the foundations for this great nation from the great liberationist text, the Holy Bible. Many enslaved Africans who were almost categorically Christian rebelled against the hypocrisy of the Declaration of Independence and fought alongside the British, while many believed they would be freed if the Americans won. Regardless of the side, they fought and they often died for the underlying reason: freedom. On November 12, 1775, General George Washington decreed in his orders that neither Negroes, boys unable to bear arms, nor old men could enlist in the Continental Army. However, just 2 days later, black soldiers scored a victory for the British at Camp's Landing along the Virginian coast. The belief that it was the British monarchy rather than a new American republic that was more likely to deliver Africans from slavery. Although Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence had blamed the Christian king George III for the institution of slavery in America, blacks did not see the king that way at all. On the contrary, he was their enemy's enemy and thus their friend, emancipator, and guardian. Great men like George Whitefield preached to large numbers of enslaved people, and they found the biblical message of spiritual equality before God appealing and found comfort in the biblical theme of deliverance. Fearing the Christian message of spiritual equality, slave owners initially resisted evangelicals' preaching to their bondspeople. But as the revival movement spread, a few even came to consider it their Christian duty to teach their slaves about the Bible. This fear of spiritual equality was true. Enslaved people were listening to the message of freedom as much as their enslaving patriot counterparts. 20,000 enslaved Africans fought for the British. Dunmore's proclamation pledges freedom in return for service. Lord Dunmore, the royal governor of Virginia, who had been forced to flee the capital of Williamsburg and form a government in exile aboard the warship HMS Fowey, made a startling announcement. For the first time in public, he formally read a proclamation that he had issued the previous week, granting freedom to the enslaved workers or rebels who escaped to the British custody. This promise of freedom aroused over 20,000 enslaved Africans to fight for their freedom, not so much as the British cause, a tactic Abraham Lincoln would use 100 years later. Many of these former enslaved Africans were Christian. My paper discusses the fate of some of these people that end up in Nova Scotia after the British lose the war. But the British did try to make freedom possible for those that fought on their side, unlike many of the patriots who kept their compatriots like James Amistad Lafayette enslaved, even after his loyal service to the revolution during the Revolutionary War. I hope my paper creates an understanding that typically is not discussed or studied during American history classes. Thank you.